Em vez de founders, pode dizer managers.
Hi, welcome everyone to another Stay Home, Keep Growing event. I'm Lígia, I'm part of the Startup Portugal team, and today we'll be talking about Tech for COVID-19 with one of its managers, João Figueirinhas Costa. Hi, João.
Hi, Lígia. Thank you for the invitation and for having me.
What is Tech for COVID-19?
So Tech for COVID-19 is a movement, a very informal movement created by originally startup founders, Portuguese startup founders. Now it has grown in the last 3 to 4 weeks. It has grown to a bit more than 5,000 volunteers, mainly coming from the startup ecosystem, but obviously not only. And what we're basically doing is we're working together and using what we call our collective intelligence to basically launch and design different projects, products, platforms with a tech component to it. I mean, all of them have an operational component as well, but all of these projects have what we call a tech component to it, and we're basically launching it. All of these projects are trying to mitigate or somehow support any of the challenges created by this context of COVID-19. So we're trying to focus, I mean, out of all of these challenges that we've been having and society has been having, we're trying to launch different projects that can help mitigate that context for each of the different problems. So in kind of a short way, this is what we've been doing.
We know that Tech for COVID is a community of over 4,700 people at this point. How do you manage so many volunteers and make sure all their efforts are for the same purpose?
Yeah, that's a great question, and that has been our main challenge, I would say. So basically, formally, the way that we are kind of managing the movement is through a Slack group. And if anyone who is listening to us has ever used Slack, you will probably understand that managing 5,000 people on a Slack workspace is actually a very challenging thing to do. But that's how we've been operating. And it's actually, I mean, what we basically did was this was not true since the start, but what we have basically been doing day after day, and kind of as the movement evolves and as we have more volunteers, is we have been creating more structure and more support system, and essentially have more rules, handbooks, guidelines, etc., to make sure, or to the limit of our capacity, that people have the right information of where to go, how to support, how to have an impact, and how to get involved in different projects or even start new projects. But yes, I mean, it's definitely a huge challenge, and I think that on an organizational perspective, that is the core challenge that we have. It will never be perfect. It's not perfect now, and I don't think it will ever be perfect. But it is functional to a certain point. And at this point, given kind of a context of emergency type of approach, that's what we're looking at. It's functional, not perfect. So Slack group we also have a website with public information that we also use some kind of hidden pages on that website to communicate with the volunteers. And we have an internal organization team. So it's a group of volunteers that basically operate in 3 areas that are more clear in terms of explaining what they do. One is volunteer management. So this means all of the component of onboarding new volunteers, how they get information, and how they allocate to projects, and how we basically understand who we have in the movement. So that would be the kind of the talent management component. The second part under this internal organization would be internal communication. So kind of after the onboarding is how do we keep communication? How do people understand what the movement is doing? And kind of, so we share impact reports on a daily basis. We share different numbers of what the movement is doing, and we try and share the different projects that are coming up, so that people know what's been going on. And also, I mean, generally speaking, just to have the information circulating so that people know what they are part of. And thirdly, what we call the PMO team, which is kind of product management team. Not that we are managing all of the projects. I mean, not at all. So each project has kind of a project leader. So the person that typically provided the idea for the project or has been more excited about the project. What we do with this kind of PMO team is support the project leaders and the core project management teams for every project, and kind of making sure that they're making the most out of all of the resources we have in the community. So this means that we make sure that they know of all of the sponsors we have, all of the partners we have, all of the services that we have access to, all of our network and connections that we have as a movement, and that they also have, I mean, access to the talent team, for example. So basically, it's kind of a shared services type of approach, but in a proactive way. And yeah, so basically, this is how we're trying to manage the community. But at the same time, because it's a very organic community, it's non-hierarchical. So although there are people that clearly have coordination aspects to their kind of day-to-day participation in the movement, I mean, this is mostly a non-hierarchical organization, very organic, very informal. So basically, all of the authority that we, inverted commas, have within the movement is very much for organizational perspectives and for an organizational approach, and not really for a decision-making process. Because for that we have, I mean, we have different systems to kind of make decisions, and like I said, it's a very autonomous process that we have been running.
I was going to ask you about this, how all the projects are managed. Mm-hmm. Does each project have a specific mindset and a way to work?
Yeah, so I'd say that, like I said, because all projects have their own. Most projects have their own project manager and their own project team. So different projects work in different ways at its core. So we have extremely experienced and seasoned and senior project managers running a few projects. And we clearly see that. So we have like daily meetings. They operate under Scrum. They have like a team, and they have team managers, and they do this by their own will, and they organize this based on their own experience. And this is something great to see. And these types of teams are typically teams that need less support from what we call the internal organization team, but they're fully operational, fully functional, and they operate in a super fluid way, in a super efficient way. And sometimes we see, I mean, not sometimes, in these cases, we see results every 24 hours. So every day when I catch up with a few of the project managers, you can see that like tons of work was done in the previous day, and that's really cool. So you have projects launching in 3-4 days and kind of getting to official launch and communication in 5 or 6 days, perhaps. And then you have, I mean, I don't. This is not how we label the projects, but I mean, just for understanding, then we have projects that are really good ideas, or are like sustainable ideas and ideas that has got a group of volunteers interested in developing that idea, but the team or the core team that is running the project is less experienced as a project manager. And in those cases, those are the teams that typically need a bit more support from the internal organization team, and typically the PMO task force, as we call it, which is basically kind of trying to get a structure for them to operate in. I mean, not a formal one, like I said, but kind of giving tips of kind of how often should you kind of interact with the team, and how you should provide information, and what does success look like in terms of the launch of the project, and I mean, all of that. So every group and every project is different. The only kind of we do have a few formal rules of how, and stages. It's like an acceleration program within the community, let's say. So we have this channel called Brainstorm channel, which is where any volunteer who has an idea typically starts there. It's by presenting the idea and kind of having a written pitch of the idea. And then there's engagement, and that builds a thread. So different volunteers give their opinion and their inputs, and then you have a little group that starts building organically. I mean, or not, if the idea is not interesting for a few people. But in the cases where it actually starts picking up, you basically have kind of a group of people in a thread who then say, okay, let's do this, and they start a channel, and that channel we call starting a prospect. So a prospect is when you have a small group of people who are interested in an idea, and they autonomously build a new channel on Slack. So they leave the general brainstorm channel. They go onto this other channel called prospects underscore name of project, and they give it a name. And in that prospect, they use that channel, and any other tools they want, they use that channel to communicate. And it's typically a public channel where anyone who joins the community and is kind of looks through the channels and is interested in the general topic of that project can connect to that channel and give inputs and participate in that project. So from prospect, which is kind of a small idea and kind of with a small team, and they're still trying to validate what the problem is and what the solution to that problem will be. When that starts kind of taking shape, we kind of graduate these prospects to another stage, which is the project. So the project, there are a few kind of criteria to be a project. One is you have a committed team. The second is you have a clear problem validation, so you know exactly what you're trying to solve. And third is you have a clear solution for that problem. So you know exactly what you're trying to execute. And then the project stage is the execution stage. So it's when you already have kind of your little tech team and your little marketing team and your little kind of product management team and communication team and all of that and operational team, and you're just executing the solution. So you're building the solution. And then when the project is ready to launch, you basically have a meeting with a few of the central team managers, so communication, PMO, talent, and legal. And basically, if there's a check and a validation from all of these kind of different teams, and don't take this as kind of a super strict process. This is we try to make this as agile and flexible as possible. But because we just need checks because everything that we're communicating, given all of the sponsors, the partners, etc., that we have, we need to ensure that everything that we give a Tech for COVID stamp has some structure and is kind of functional and is kind of well structured in a way. So assuming that there's checks from all of these cases, then it becomes and graduates to what we call a supported project. So supported project is exactly like a project, but with a finalized, or kind of at least the MVP is ready to launch, and therefore at that stage the project leader from that project becomes part of the overall coordination of the movement and gets access to external communication, media relations, government liaison, sponsorships, any services that we have. So that's basically, it's kind of a fully supported project by the movement, and it shows up everywhere on our website and kind of externally, it is part of Tech for COVID. So that's basically it. Okay, so now that I was hearing myself, I was thinking that, this probably looks like a super structured and technocratic thing. We try, although we have these mental stages, we just try, one idea can go from brainstorm to supported in 3 days. If there's a team that is committed to do that in 3 days, and if the nature of the project is doable in that time frame. So that's basically what we're doing and how we're organizing.
Okay, and how many solutions have you launched so far? How are you?
Yeah, so it's hard to kind of give a round number because there's so much stuff kind of happening at once. But we're on around 30 different projects that have some capacity and that are fairly robust. We're talking about 30 projects, but we do have more than 60 projects, kind of ideas that are trying to kind of evolve and develop. But I'd say that kind of public projects we're between 27 and 30 projects.
And how you're monitoring the impact of each one? Can you share some results with us?
Yeah. So the main way that we do is on our website, on announcements in Slack, and kind of emails that we send to anyone who has registered. I can send a few results. So we just crossed 5,000 volunteers. We had a crowdfunding campaign that was has been running for a couple of weeks, where we fundraised roughly 200,000 euros from 6,400 donors. And I'm kind of making a point on this number because this wasn't one or two companies that gave us the money. This means that it was actually properly crowdfunded in a way that people gave 3, 4, 5, 6 euros, and the accumulation of this was roughly 200K. So I wanted to kind of make a point of that, because this is one of the things that I mostly like, is the crowd and that kind of the collective wisdom and the collective support, that the community-driven aspect to it. I think that's one of the cool things. Then one of the projects that was one of the first projects that we kind of launched, supported, and is actually now very autonomous in a way, is the Rooms Against COVID. So the Rooms Against COVID is from kind of Airbnb apartments or kind of short-term rental websites and landlords, property owners, who are now, I mean, on a very low in terms of tourists, obviously, and even hotels, who are obviously also in a very low in terms of occupation, who have kind of given their flats, or they have made available their rooms or their flats or their houses for what we call first-line professionals, so doctors, nurses, security, security forces, etc. People who are outside their houses, or who are very prone to get infected, and therefore cannot go home to their families, and therefore they need some place to stay. And we thought that we should kind of organize a platform for this. So we have roughly, I don't know the exact number at this minute, but roughly 1,500 rooms available already. But this number keeps growing every day. And as far as I understand, we should have roughly 400 matches already made, but this number also grows every day. These are numbers of the results of about 1 week in operation. So I think these are also kind of great numbers for this specific project, but this is one of the first projects that we launched. One other project that we launched in the beginning was the online medical appointments. So this was launched so that people who had either the need to be clarified about something, or the need to actually have a medical appointment because their medical appointment got cancelled and they think it's something more urgent, but not urgent enough to go to a hospital or any other kind of medical unit. They do an online appointment where a doctor can actually, from different specialties, can actually allocate them and guide them and give some orientation. So far we did 240 medical appointments, but the number also keeps growing every day. So these numbers are always kind of a bit off because it's happening as we go. So these are like a few numbers that I think are worth sharing. There are many other projects. I mean, I could kind of go on and on. One other project that we still don't have impact numbers because we're only launching it now, is a project called Student Keep. And Student Keep is to support students who are obviously at home and who have no access to internet or laptops, and therefore are kind of a bit excluded from the distance learning scenario and this whole context. So what Student Keep is doing is collecting donations and existing laptops, for example, from companies or private. I mean, anyone who has available computers and is willing to loan or give them away. Student Keep is basically identifying with schools and the government students who have this need and collecting the equipment and kind of making the match and delivering the equipment to them. So there's roughly, I mean, numbers depending on sources vary, but kind of I think that the most consensual number is roughly 50,000 students in Portugal until grade 9 that have no computer or no internet or both at home. So with Student Keep, we're trying to, I mean, the best case scenario is we get 50,000 computers delivered to 50,000 students and families who don't have one, and the students need them to kind of continue learning over the next period and to be part and engaged of the school life as well. So, I mean, many other projects, these are kind of just a few highlights, but I think that these are kind of very worthy projects to speak about.
Yeah. And what are the next steps for Tech for COVID-19?
Yeah, so I think this is actually a question that we get asked very often. So Tech for COVID-19 is a movement that is called Tech for COVID-19. So by itself and by the name, as the name indicates, it has a very specific scope. And our efforts and our scope will be fighting the context and the challenges that are driven or are a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. Okay, so obviously the challenges that we face, some are very urgent, like hospital equipment, or like I mean, anything that is more health related, to be honest, is kind of more urgent. But I mean, everything which is regarding kind of work and employment and the economy and sustaining businesses and kind of sustaining income for lower income people or people with a kind of less of a safety net, supporting government in kind of facing all of these challenges and the huge pressure that government is having. So all of these things are what I would consider short-term needs or more emergent needs. And then you have kind of the second tier. I mean, not that they are less important, but they are simply less urgent by various criteria. And a few of these that I mentioned: labor, keeping companies up, etc. And this might be something that we also tackle in kind of the short term. And then, I mean, for Tech for COVID-19, there's obviously different questions. We are very much focused in COVID-19 related issues, and therefore, hopefully, we will have a very we will know when this will end, and maybe it's 1 month, maybe it's 2, maybe it's 3, maybe it's 6, but there will be an end to the pandemic, and at that moment, we will then, as a community, have to decide if, one, the movement stops because our mission is completed, because the pandemic has been completed, or if by some reason there's keeping the same spirit up, if we can do something else that, I mean, having the same type of spirit and the same type of mission that can be adjusted to other things post COVID-19. So this is an ongoing discussion. We're not focused in that discussion, to be honest. So it's something that keeps popping up, but it's not something that we're too worried about, to be honest. We started less than a month ago. So we started for COVID-19 related issues. We will keep working on COVID-19 related issues, and then we'll see. But we're very much focused on this right now.
And what would be the advice for someone who's trying to make an effort like this in their own community?
Yeah, so I think that, I mean, one of the really important things is a lot of people, and this is a very good thing, a lot of people are trying to help. I'm not talking about Tech for COVID-19 only. Generally speaking, people are very mobilized. And people are very, I mean, from companies to government to individual people to elderly to social sector to startups. I mean, I don't know anyone who is not mobilized or not interested in somehow supporting or giving aid. So I think that that's the first really good kind of thing about this is people have been volunteering, people have been kind of really stepping up as a society and as a community, and I think Portugal has been a real example in that. So I think that's the first really positive thing. The second thing, and kind of answering your question, I think that is explore a little bit of what's already going on. I think that starting a new project is a super cool thing, but there's a point where if we're starting to do if there's too many projects doing the same thing, it's not an issue, and I don't think it's a competition issue. So a lot of people ask me, oh, what's the differentiating factor about Tech for COVID? I don't think that's the terms we should discuss this, but I generally think that find a project, a already existing project, where you can actually add value and where you will actually make a difference and where your expertise, your talent, or your availability will actually be useful. Yep. So that's the first topic. And there's a lot of information. You can connect with one of the projects at Tech for COVID-19. You can go, I mean, there's so many platforms with different projects going on. Just search for a bit and you will find dozens and hundreds of projects that you can help. If by some reason you have a really good idea that you still didn't see being kind of addressed by any of the projects that you find, then try and get a group of people to develop that idea, whether it's within Tech for COVID-19 or not. If it's more of a technological component or a digital version, etc., then I think Tech for COVID-19 will be kind of a good ecosystem for you to build your idea, and there's a whole process and support structure for that. if you want to do it with your group of friends or within your company or your work colleagues, that's also fine, and just do it. I think that doing it is really good. I think that there's a few things that you need to think about, which is it a real problem? I mean, is it a real problem that you're trying to solve? I mean, it's the same type of question as when you're trying to build a company, right? Are you trying to solve a problem that actually exists? So it's exactly the same parallel, but in a slightly different context. But I think, I mean, identify a problem, try to solve that problem, or if it's like a little pet project, then do that. I think that one of the things I've been fighting with myself about is, so Tech for COVID develops projects that are very structured, but sometimes it's kind of your neighbor needs someone to go to the supermarket, or the neighbor across from you needs someone to go to the supermarket, or needs help with something, or needs babysitting because they need to go to work, or maybe the child from the apartment above you needs support and tutoring for math class or for English class. So I think that there are several ways of helping. I think that Tech for COVID type of projects that are tech-based, very structured, etc., and have they're very strategic in a certain sense. I think it's obviously a way to do it, and and that's the way that I'm somehow contributing. There are much more imminent, fast ways that you can also contribute, and it doesn't have to be one or the other. So you can participate in a Tech for COVID project and help your neighbor and tutor your other neighbor and go to the supermarket for your other neighbor. This can coexist, right? So I think that's another way. And there's other stuff that you can also do, which is supporting in the social sector. For example, nursery homes are looking for volunteers because a lot of their employees who are trained people carers have to be home with their kids or their families and support other people. So if you're kind of young and healthy and you're available for one reason or the other, you can also, yes, you can participate in kind of more structured projects, but you can also just call your local nursery home or the nursery home where your grandfather or grandmother lives, or any place that you know of, and just say, I'm available to help part-time schedule, or I'm available to help full-time schedule. Can I be of any use? And just go there. So I think that all of these are different possibilities. Yes, Tech for COVID or any other like more structured digital project, nursery homes, or just helping your neighbor. All of these are extremely useful and legitimate ways of supporting. And not everyone has to build a project and publish a website and all of that. I know I'm speaking kind of against what we're doing, but it's just different ways of supporting. And I think that, answering your question, if I want to help, how can I help? Just think of what you're more connected with and just try and build this. But do not kind of think it's less valuable to support by giving your time in one specific physical space. It is very, very useful right now. So I think that you should just kind of think about any of these ways and make sure that it's something that you're committed and proud of doing.
Nice. And how can people join, help, and support Tech for COVID-19?
Yeah, so if Tech for COVID-19 is what you want to support, you should just go to our website, so techforcovid19.org. And in our website, you'll have all of the information, the ongoing supported project, a bit of more information on how we organize ourselves, etc. There's a big pink button called Juntat, or Join Us. And basically, if you click there, you go through a form where you basically not apply, but kind of just fill in your personal information. And that will take you through a circuit of how to connect to our Slack group, how do we organize. There's kind of a README onboarding file. So if you basically just go to Join Us, big pink button on kind of top right corner, you just go through that flow and you'll connect through Slack, and then you'll have access to a whole world of the Tech for COVID-19 community.
Great. Thanks, João, and everyone working on your project.
Thank you very much for having us.
And bye, and see you in our next.
Bye, and good luck. I hope we are able to chat again in person about other stuff and not only Tech for COVID-19.
Yeah, that would be great. And see you at our next.
Thank you so much for your time. Ciao, ciao.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Ciao.